How many of you here would say the reason that you're pursuing a career in music is that you love it? How many of you feel like music saved your life or like it helped you feel understood? Now, have you ever asked yourself why you want to be successful or how you want to be successful or what drives you to be successful? There are many people using success to fill a hole inside of them, and I was one of those people. I can promise you this, no amount of platinum records or Grammys is going to make you happy, but working on music in good environments with people who respect you will. What's up, guys? I'm AMAC McGuire. I'm a platinum mix engineer, vocal producer, and songwriter. I've had 2 successful careers in the music industry, one in the studio and one as a front of house engineer doing live shows. Today I'm here to talk to you guys about the realities of the music industry. Before I begin, I have to thank Brene Brown, Elizabeth Gilbert, Jay Shetty, and Pema Cordone. Their work inspired me to understand myself and life on a deeper level, and without their work, I would not have this to share with you. I've lived my dreams of working with major labels, traveling the world, supporting myself, and getting platinum and gold records. I've also been stabbed in the back by the people that I loved for their gain. I've been cursed out by artists that I've given my everything to, and I've burnt out in an epic fashion. I was exhausted. Music became a bad job, and I didn't know who I was without it. I've learned many hard lessons about this business, about life, and myself through the process. I'm going to speak from my experiences, succeeding and failing, and everything I've learned in between. I'm gonna go over the materials that I gave out to you guys, but they're not for you to fill out during this talk. I want you to check in with them as I'm going over everything to get familiar with the concept, but to fill them out when you have time to really think about what I've said here today. We're going to explore the ins and outs of the everyday life of a professional in music, but the most important thing that you need to know before you get into this business is yourself. If you are not locked in to who you are, it's going to be really easy for people to take advantage of you. I want you to enjoy the process, take care of yourself, enjoy your life, and not get jaded by the industry like so many of us have. I spent so much time trying to live my dreams that I didn't realize the dream was right in front of me. It's easy to get lost, it's easy to lose your way, but in this talk, I'm going to give you some tools to help you navigate this industry and your life. I'm going to share my stories with you, but there's no hard and fast rules here. I can't tell you what to do in real life situations. You are the only one who gets to figure out how you want to live your life. We have to look deeper at ourselves and ask ourselves some questions before we get started. What we value, our whys, our what, and our hows. Our values are who we are. Our whys are our motivation. Our what is what we do for our whys, and our how is how we want to do it. These 4 things make up our inner compass. Being clear on who we are is how you navigate through tough situations and create boundaries that support the type of life you actually want to live. Compasses have 4 main physical components: the needle, the dial, the housing, and the base plate. First up, we have the needle. The needle always points north, giving us a fixed reference point for navigating. The needle represents your values. Our values are who we are at our core, what we hold most important, what we believe in, and what we want our behaviors standard to be based around. Your values, just as the needle, give you a fixed reference point for navigating life's choices. They serve as the unwavering guide for your actions, regardless of whether your motivations stem from your purpose or your ego. I've learned from and agree with Brene Brown's research that it's best practice to narrow our values down to 2. Take a look at the list that I gave you and feel which ones resonate with you, but don't choose more than 20. Then you narrow it down to your top 2 that you feel most represent all of those values put together. All of the other values will go into supporting your top two. For example, my core values are authenticity and growth. Underneath authenticity is accountability, compassion, courage, and gratitude. Under growth is patience, community, vulnerability, and more. You can see my example in the back of the packet as well. You do this exercise to pinpoint your core values. And then next up, we have the dial. The dial of the compass helps you orient yourself relative to the needle, indicating your direction of travel. The dial is your whys. Our whys are a motivation. We break our whys down into two separate directions, your purpose whys and your ego whys. Your purpose whys help you move through your work and life in purpose, alignment, and high self-esteem. Your ego whys move you through your work and life to feed your ego, your insecurities, and low self-esteem. Our values influence our why, but the whys are the motivation behind our actions. Our goal is to be aware of all of our whys so that we can check in with them and see which ones are in the driver's seat as we're making the hard decisions about our hows, which I'll get into soon. Some of our whys, we might not even be aware that we are carrying. I wasn't aware of one of my ego whys until recently. It's key not to judge yourself here. We identify all of our whys to see which ones serve us and which ones don't. Being self-aware is one of the most important things you can do for yourself in life. Knowing why you're making a decision, whatever that decision is invaluable. Sometimes, even our best values can help fuel our ego and not our purpose. This is why identifying our whys is so important. Our purpose whys stem from a place of purpose, love, and high self-esteem. Mine stem from the moment that I fell in love with music. I'm not sure if any of you have ever seen the movie Hardball with Keanu Reeves, where he's forced to coach the kids' baseball team. Hey, let's go. I got like 3. Nobody ever knows the movie. I mean, yeah, G baby, R.I.P. man. But in that movie, the kid who pitches, he can't focus and pitch unless he's listening to Big Papa by the Notorious B.I.G. And when I was watching, yeah, I know, right? But when I was watching that movie, that's when I fell in love with music. I was just changed. It was the first time I remember that something clicked and I immediately understood myself on a deeper level. It just made me feel less alone. Biggie has always been a constant in my life when things get really hard or when they get really joyous. I wanted to create music that had that kind of impact and brought that kind of joy to other people. My purpose whys are joy and impact. And our ego whys, they stem from a darker place, our insecurities, and our hurt from life. These kinds of feelings can come up for many different reasons, from our parents, being bullied, substance abuse, instability, loss, and many other complicated traumas. I know these are tough things to think about and ask ourselves, but they are imperative to knowing why we make decisions and stay places and do things. My ego whys are proving people wrong and searching for validation to prove that I am worth something. We'd all like to believe that we operate from our purpose whys all the time. But if you did a little honest digging, isn't it possible you might be leading from some part of your ego too? And look, that's not to say that your ego whys can't be useful. My why of proving others wrong is a place that gave me a lot of drive in the beginning. There was a woman who I worked with at a grocery store sub shop who told me that I would never make it and I would be right back there making subs for the rest of my life. That moment and many others helped me push through times of doubt and failure. Even in this moment, I'm still like, what's up, Mary? I've never made another sub a day in my life. But if we're being honest, that's still just my ego talking, right? And look, that was cool for a while, but these days it doesn't faze me one bit when somebody says that I can't do something. I for sure don't need the motivation. The motivation comes from my purpose. and how I want to live my life. Continuing to want to prove others wrong means that I do not think that I am good enough. Though many successful people have used this to jumpstart their careers, it is not sustainable in the long run. Think about it like this. When we introduce ourselves, a lot of the time we introduce ourselves as our what, which is what we do for our why. So for example, I'll say, hey, I'm AMAC and I'm an audio engineer. But when we get down to who we are, as in our values and our whys, when I introduce myself, I want to say, hi, I'm AMAC and I make an impact and I bring joy. Not, hey, I'm AMAC and I just love to prove people wrong. Does any of this resonate with you guys? Hey, can you dig deeper into yourself and be real about your whys? Why do you want to make music professionally? Why do you want to be successful? And don't judge yourself here. It's so much more important to be aware than to look good. Everyone here is just an imperfect human being. So when you have time to really sit down and think about this stuff, write your whys down on the packet that I gave you guys. Next up, we have the housing. The housing of the compass provides the necessary support to the needle and dial to fulfill their purpose. The housing is your what? What action do you take for your values and your whys? For this instance, we're using music to fulfill our purpose, our ego, and our values. And we're using music as a general term here, but it could be more specific. Are you being a musical artist, a producer, a songwriter, an engineer, or an A&R, or anything else of the million things you could do in music? And it's also worth noting that there's no reason you can't have more than one what. And last, but certainly not least, and quite possibly the most important thing there is in the compass is the base plate. The base plate of the compass provides stability and support, allowing you to use the compass effectively. The base plate is your how. How do you take care of yourself? How do you want to live? How do you implement your values and achieve your goals considering both purpose-driven and ego-driven motivations? When you trade your creative passions for money, things are going to get a little sticky. Making a living as a creative is not a sure thing, no matter how good you are at it. It puts a lot of pressure on your art and yourself. You're going to face a lot of rejection, criticism, and opinions about your work. You're going to deal with demanding people. How do you even get your foot in the door? How do you make it a career? How do you find the path that works for you? When you are aware, it will be much harder for you to fall for manipulation and toxic narratives. Together, your values, whys, what, and hows create your inner compass. The only way to know if this is for you is to try. And my guess is, if you guys are here today, you kind of want to try, right? And look, the best part is that there isn't one way to make it. I don't believe anyone's ever made it the same way twice. And the truth is, all of you define what making it actually looks like. Here's my story of how I used my inner compass, and it led me through success, failure, and everything in between. The beginning of my story is fueled by growth and proving people wrong so I could one day figure out how to have the impact that I wanted to have. I had dropped out of college to pursue audio as a career. I did a quick 6-month program, and after that, well, I was pretty much on my own. One of the biggest hows to my career, and what I would suggest that anyone do when they want to get into something in life, is talk to anybody who is willing to talk to you about it. If you want to be in it, well, you're going to have to be around people who are in it. And now we have social media where you can search and find these events and resources. But in 2009, after I left audio school, the best social networking tool I had was Craigslist. I would scour the ads and meet with anyone who had any knowledge of music, which honestly put me in a ton of sketchy situations. So be careful. My first real gig actually came from me just running around Philadelphia, stopping at every studio and knocking at their door and seeing who was going to let me in. I got hired at a place called Little Drummer Boy Recordings, and I became an engineer. I learned a lot from that first gig. In all honesty, it was more of like a paid internship because I seriously didn't know anything yet. And I only stayed there for a couple months because to work there you had to be exclusive to the studio, and that just wasn't for me. One of my biggest hows is not staying in places that are trying to hold me back from my value of growth. It's a big red flag for me when someone tries to stop me from having other experiences. And I can't stress this enough, we're really just here to have the experience anyway. Unless the internship or the gig is giving you everything that you need, I wouldn't suggest tying yourself down, especially in the beginning. People always tell you to say yes to everything, but I think the beginning is the perfect time to say no. And if I'm being honest, I think all the time is the perfect time to say no for things that don't align to you. But in the beginning, what do you have to lose? Instead of staying somewhere that doesn't feel right, you can open up space in your life and use your time to find something that aligns with how you want to live. When you are starting, I promise that you have a lot more time than you could ever imagine. If any of you are putting pressure on yourself to have it all together by 25 or 30 or 35 or truly any time in your life, just stop. The time to try new things is now. Throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. You never know where anything is going to lead you. I've been in and out of my dream job throughout my career, and I even had a whole entire career that I never even considered. Eventually, I kind of ran out of all my money. I know it's like a typical going broke to making it story, but hey, I was broke. I got a job at a Jimmy John's to make some money, and I ended up just quitting after the first day. I told myself I was going to figure out this music thing, and a week later, back on Craigslist, I saw a job opening for a front of house engineer position at a club. They were hiring for the small upstairs venue. The ad pretty much said, "We'll take anyone who's going to accept $60 a night." That's me, right here. I will take it. If you want to start making money in the beginning, you kind of just have to take what you can get. The way to make money in this business is seriously just to find anyone who's willing to pay you money in it. So start where you can and build up later. Now, before this interview, I'd attempted live sound maybe 2 times, and neither of them went really well, but those guys didn't know that. So during the interview, I told them, look, don't interview anyone else. I want every single gig. I live within walking distance of this venue, so I can't even call off if there is a blizzard. And they never interviewed another person, and I got every single gig on the schedule. And look, I never even wanted to be a live sound engineer, but it seemed that any job in music was better than no job in music. So through the years, I've tour managed, I've DJ'd, I've sold merch, I've negotiated contracts, and so much more. Stay open to all the opportunities to get your foot in the door and gain more experience. You never know where it's going to take you. And working at Dobbs was some of the best 5 years of my life. And now look, the next part is incredibly important. Dobbs was a place where if I failed, I was not fired, I was taught, I was supported, sometimes with incredibly hard lessons. But finding a place like that is the most important thing you should have on your house list. You find a place where they have your back and want you to grow, not a place where they belittle you and keep you stuck. Dobbs let me be my authentic self. They never held me back from doing anything, and in fact, they encouraged it. Dobbs was some of the best paid networking of my entire life. Within months, I was all over the city, and I started going out on tours, and I'd get calls from people that I didn't even know. Word of mouth is always going to be your best credit. And one of the people who called me was a woman named Barb. Barb had heard about me around town, and she asked me to cover for her at her venue. I love Barb so much, I would not be here without her. A couple years after that first call, I was out on tour with an artist doing pretty much everything but audio engineering or getting paid. When Barb called me and said, hey, do you want to go on tour and do front of house for a rapper? There was another leg on the tour I was on, but I was miserable and I was looking for any reason to leave this situation. So I said, yeah. An hour later, she called me back and she said, hey, so the tour is actually for Fetty Wap. And that year was Wap's year. He was one of the biggest artists in the world. Scared as hell, I said, hell yeah, let's do this thing. Later down the line, they told me an up-and-coming artist was going to open for him. Just a guy named Post Malone. This is one of the biggest breaks of my life, and it changed everything for me. When I went out on the tour with Fetty Wap, I had never done venues that size. When I started at Dobbs, I had never done live sound, period. So what do you do when you open a door you might not be prepared for? Well, the first thing you gotta do is just walk right through. Then you gotta ask some questions. If you don't know things, you've gotta ask, especially when you're in places with seriously expensive equipment. The first few shows, I would go up to the house crew and say, hey guys, so it's my first tour of this size. You wanna help me out? And every time I ever asked for help, I'd been given it. I did this all the time when I got into the studio as well. Taking these opportunities I might not have been ready for led me to the next one, to learn faster, and so much more than I could ever imagine. The Fetty Wap tour was one that I never even dreamed of, and I met one of the most important mentors in my life on that tour, Jay. Mentors are a key part of making it. You're gonna need guidance from someone who has done this at a level that you haven't, is excited about helping you grow, and is gonna answer your calls when you're losing your mind, and I promise you, you are gonna be losing your shit. I suggest you have multiple mentors in different areas of expertise. I've had many mentors over the years, and I would not be here without them. So after the tour, I stayed up with Jay, and I would make it a priority to go to New York every week to see her. After a while, she encouraged me to move to LA, and I'll never forget her telling me, look, Allie, nobody can ever take that tour away from you, but if you really want to make records, you have got to go to LA. And I got to tell you, I never wanted to move to LA. I am a Philly girl through and through, but I never wanted to be a live sound engineer either. And for 7 years, I had a whole professional career, and I had just done one of the biggest tours of the year. 7 years of a whole other career before I could move into the one that I originally dreamed of. Live sound taught me so much. I got to see so much of the world because of it. Without Dobbs, without live sound, I am not here. Go with the flow. If the flow takes you somewhere that you didn't expect, enjoy the ride and learn everything that you can. I had so much fun, and I worked with so many legends during this time of my life. I'm a better studio engineer because of my experience in the live arena, lots of growth, authenticity, joy, impact, proving people wrong, and finding my worth in absolutely all of that. I moved to LA in March of 2017, and I was back in the boat of just not knowing a single person. So it was time to network, but this time I did it a little differently. Besides going to networking events, I tell people all the time to create events no one is asking you to create. What would you like to see? Where do you see a need? And what would have helped or would still help you right now? I do this a lot, and it really fuels my whys of impact and joy, as well as my value of growth and authenticity. I joined an organization called Sound Girls as a live engineer. And at the time, they were a really live sound heavy organization, but still for women in all audio careers. I asked them if I could start an event called The Studio Side to bring more studio programs to the organization. You want to always add value when you're asking organizations to work with you. What would also help them? I was going to every networking event that I could, and I ended up finding myself at Emerson College's LA campus. After that event was over, I found the coordinator of the event, and I told him I worked with a women in music organization, and I was looking for a space to put on a similar kind of event. The school was happy to work with Sound Girls to promote women in the industry, and I was able to put my event together with the support of 2 great organizations. Solve a need and use your connections to your advantage to create your life. A big plus of working with these organizations is that they gave me access to people who may not have given me the time of day otherwise. I was able to meet, learn, and network with so many people through these events I may have never had access to otherwise. Community and network are so important. I was in LA for 4 months, had gotten a steady live gig at a place called Vitello's. I was running around networking like a crazy person and still trying to figure out how I was gonna get into the studio when Jay flew out to LA for a week. She was great friends with a guy named JP. He owned a studio called Melrose Sound in Hollywood, and Jay was there every day to write, and as long as I had nothing else going on, I was there meeting up with her and hanging at the studio. All week, I watched JP work, and I soaked in everything I could. After the week was over, I asked JP for his number and to have a meeting with him. I wanted to be an engineer there. He told me, sure, reach out, we'll have a meeting. Just bring along your template for me to check out. And I said, sure, knowing damn well I didn't have a template of my own. I was nowhere near good enough to be a working recording engineer in LA at that time. But I always moved with so much confidence, no one knew, including me. I had purposely sat back and watched JP engineer all week, so off of memory, I made a template as close to his as I could. When I came in for our meeting, I played him some stuff I had mixed and showed him my template. He said, cool, that looks so close to mine. And he started calling me for sessions. JP has 9 #1 records, countless plaques, and is one of the nicest guys I've ever met. Getting in at Melrose was one of the most fortunate things that have ever happened to me, and very similar to Dobbs, if I made mistakes, I didn't have to worry about being fired. I was taught. JP is a human who wants to see you succeed and get further in your life. And that's green flag 101. In this business and life, sometimes you're gonna gain connections that you don't use or need for actual years. And back when I was touring, I met this guy named Bill. He wrote down his number on this very, very small piece of paper and gave it to me in 2015. He said, hey, if you ever get to LA, give me a call. Fast forward to 2017, after I get settled, I reach out to him, he responds, and he says, hey, I'd love to get coffee, but I'm just too busy right now. So for months, I followed up with him, and my follow-up game is strong. I do not quit. Eventually, he tells me, look, Allie, I'm just too busy, but let me get you in touch with this studio that I just stopped being the head engineer at. He puts me in touch with the studio manager, and it just happens to be Good Music's facility in North Hollywood. And then all of a sudden, I had 2 seriously cool studio jobs. You never know when things are gonna come around like this. Remember that you need a lot of patience in these situations as well. It's not easy to remember that things are always working in your favor. Had Bill not been too busy and tapped me in with Good Music before Melrose, I would have not been ready for that. And take it back even further, if I hadn't done live sound, I wouldn't have been on that tour. My platinum record came from that studio, from a ripped piece of paper with a number on it that I never threw away. A whole other audio career, some hard work, and a lot of patience. This is the zoomed out version to show you guys my path and strategies I used to make my way into the industry. But what is it like to live this life day in and day out? The success story is that I went from college dropout to platinum mix engineer, but I also went from platinum mix engineer to burnout. What is too often the case for many of us is that some of our greatest moments come with some really tough and toxic stuff. When you first get your foot in the door, you're so focused on growth and it's so fun to run around and you can't believe you're living your dreams and everything is great. And you should take that in and you should enjoy it. But if you're not checking in with yourself when things are going good, you're gonna wake up one day and you let too much slide, you didn't set good boundaries, you aren't having fun anymore, and you have no idea what went wrong. This is the day-to-day stuff where you have to make tough decisions and boundaries to make it about your house. How are you willing to live your life? What kind of people do you want to spend it with? These answers are going to be different for all of us, But this is why it's so important for you to build your compass, your whys, your value, and your hows, and keep checking in with them as you navigate every single day. So let's start with sleep. There are many sleepless nights. You guys have heard that before, yeah? Very long hours and tight deadlines working in music. It's grueling. I spent most of my nights up until between 5 and 6 a.m., having to be up by 10 a.m. the next day. It's seen as a badge of honor to burn the candle at both ends and show everyone how hardworking you are. Do not buy into it. I'm not telling you that you're not going to be tired and that staying up late having fun is bad. Some of my favorite sessions in the world ended at 8 a.m. after the sun had come up. But do both. Remember to enjoy your life in the process, but prioritize your sleep and your health. If you don't care about it, nobody around you is going to care, and they will expect you to sacrifice yourself over and over. I have seen people who are 24 years old look 45 because they were so prideful in how much sleep that they didn't get and how hard they work. And now look, I didn't look 45, but I was very prideful in all the sleep I didn't get, and I would go and go and go with no sleep and no days off until there was just one day where I could not get out of my bed. And those days are not rest. They are exhaustion, and they are burnout and completely unsustainable. Those days were fueled by my ego eyes, and a great example of how my values can still lead me into some trouble. And not only are people staying up late, having long late night sessions, but those sessions are fueled by drugs and alcohol. Sometimes sessions are literal parties, and one night of partying can turn into years really quick. I've worked with a lot of drug addicts in my life, and I am fortunate that I was sober before I moved to LA. If I hadn't been, I do not know what would have happened to me. And I'm not telling you how to live your life, but I've seen some incredibly sad things. It's really easy to get caught up in this lifestyle when you're moving, when things are going great, when you're in your ego. This is when you need to be the most thoughtful of taking care of yourself. We want this work to support our life, not take it from us. It's not fun to watch people become incoherent, to not be able to put a sentence together and still be in the booth. It's not fun to be getting yelled at 7 a.m. to bounce down files when you know the person who won't let you leave won't open the files, let alone remember that they ever asked you for any of it. I've seen many artists and producers believe that they cannot create music without the drugs. I promise you that you can. You can be healthy and still make great art. I'm not sure where the idea came that you had to be suffering to make great art appear. Yes, heartbreak makes for great albums, but you don't have to live in it forever. Heal and make great art about that. If you make dope music when you're on drugs, the kind of music you can make when you're not is completely unmatched. We want to be able to tap into our pain, but we do not need to live in it. Trust me, life is never going to stop giving you stuff to write about. Life is always going to life. And one of the biggest ailments in the music industry is that many of us take on the identity of music. Like we are music. We live it, we eat it, we breathe it, we miss a lot of important things in our life for the work. This is a narrative that's shoved down our throats. One of the greatest things that I have ever heard is that when you are doing the work, you should feel like it's the most important thing in the world, while understanding that it does not matter at all. Caring is a huge part of being successful. I've never really understood people who didn't care about the work. And one of the reasons I was so successful was because I cared. But I also know that I cared way too much. I was attached, and that not only hurt my work, but it hurt me. I cared that I was thought of as great, an ego why. It took me a long time to understand that if somebody did not like my mix, it didn't mean I wasn't a good audio engineer. It meant that I just wasn't right for the project. It's not personal. As a creative, I was looking for validation from the industry, an ego why. I thought I was so hard on myself because I wanted to be better, but I was really chasing perfectionism. And there's a big difference between perfectionism and striving for excellence. Striving for excellence means caring and doing your best, a purpose why. Perfectionism is trying to have the narrative be about you, and that's an ego why. We strive for excellence by caring about the work as if it's the most important thing, while also understanding that it is not important at all. So how do you care and not be attached? Well, the work isn't you. It's not your baby. It's just work. It's just records. You are not the music. You are you. Criticism, often in the form of notes, is just information. Even if that criticism is, we went with somebody else. It's okay. No matter how hard you work, even when it's the best work you've done in your life, you could still lose the mix. Learn from it. It's just information. And often we react to criticism negatively because we were criticized as kids by our parents, or they reacted badly to criticism. And we have to work really hard to take our past wounds out of our present. Most of our need to be attached to anything is a wound we haven't healed. These things are what create our ego whys in the first place. Nothing lasts forever. There's no right or wrong way to do music. No matter what anyone preaches to you, the first thing you should have ever been taught is that there's no rules. You can take criticism in 3 different ways. The first way is the insecure way of, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm a fraud, I'm no good. The second way is the defensive way of, they don't know what they're talking about, I'm the expert, I'm the one who knows what to do here. The third way is in a curious, creative, supportive way. What can I learn from this? How can I be creative in achieving this? How can I see this from a different perspective? And look, I've been all 3 of these people, and I can tell you the third one is absolutely the healthiest way and the one that leads you to the least amount of stress. And the biggest reason I've ever lost out on a mix, even with the best clients of my life, is a lack of communication. You're going to run into a lot of clients who have no idea how to tell you what they want you to do for them. Getting creative and continuing to ask them questions to help them get there and always be teaching them is key. Always be curious. Ask more questions. If you get frustrated, it's your ego. Again, we're just making records, guys. It's going to be all right. Communication is going to get you out of a lot of jams. Asking your clients what they expect of you and laying out what you expect from them is so key to success. Ask them to be specific as possible on how they want the mix to sound or whatever you're doing. Ask for references because you definitely need them. Tell them how you need the files sent to you. Let them know all the costs involved. Keep it in an email. Please, everybody, keep everything in an email. It's the easiest way to be able to follow things for years. And yes, you're going to be going back to projects that happened years ago. Making sure that everyone is on the same page before starting stops a lot of headaches from happening down the line. And look, always remember that whatever happens, you get to try again. Whether it's with notes or your communication, there's so much pressure put on you to get things correct immediately, whether that's from someone else or yourself. Music is important, but everyone's going to be okay if the mix is not right on the first try. Nobody is going to die. It is only records. We're here for the experience, not the outcomes. If you find yourself working with people who are getting upset with you that something isn't right immediately, those are probably not your people. They are super caught up in their ego. Even the best mix engineers in the game get to mix 12 sometimes. It takes what it takes. You want collaborators and communicators, not dictators. Many times we are told we should put up with people's behavior because they are such great artists, and many times we do. This is why building your compass to be self-aware is so important here. If these things aren't in alignment, you have got to love yourself enough to walk away and find a more positive, supportive place to give your gifts. Ego is rampant in the entertainment industry. Everywhere you look, somebody's a genius. When you're coming up, everyone with a platinum record or Grammy is just someone you want to be around and impress. And look, the chances of you getting these awards if you're around people that have them absolutely increase. But let's not act like they're all good people. One of your hows should really be making sure you are around good people. Success does not equal good. Many people have been hurt by this business and life, and hurt people. It trickles down. I was treated this way, so you should be treated this way. No, it's not cool. Remember that everyone who has these awards is still a human. There is nobody who should ever treat you badly for doing a job for them because they have accomplished more. You're in the room for a reason. You do not need to take shit from people just because they have success. And don't you ever treat anyone badly the day that you do because you haven't built your compass and you haven't dealt with your own shit. When we want things so badly, we are often willing to sacrifice ourselves for it. I was told that taking abuse was part of the gig. Isn't it crazy to think that being treated badly by another person is part of the job description? As you navigate this, I really hope you love yourself enough to not go through those situations. And if you choose to, know that when you leave that place, none of that was about you. Do not take it with you. Always know that you never have to go back if you feel unsafe or if your overall health is suffering. Know that you can always walk away from something and create space for something so much better and more aligned with who you are. Often we get caught up in these situations where we're afraid to leave because this might be our only shot. The idea that you only have one shot is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You have as many shots as you want to take. Walk away from things that don't align. Gigs come and go. Like I mentioned earlier, I've been in and out of my dream gig over the years. There aren't many things that last a lifetime in this business. If something isn't for you, or if something does not work out, there is no need to stress. What is for you will not miss you. An example of this is when I worked at a studio house. One client was the son of a high-level person in the industry, and I got asked to do some sessions with him. He was a nice enough kid, but in the sessions, we barely ever recorded things, and he would show up late, like, all the time. And, like, look, be ready for people to show up really, really late or not show up at all. That's, like, kind of a reality of the business. But these sessions always came in really last minute and were not close to my house. It would be 4 p.m. in the afternoon in Los Angeles, California, when I'm working on something else and I get a call to be over there by 6 p.m. Drop my whole day and go. I get there early, set up, I'm ready, and then he just wouldn't show up until 10 p.m. anyway. And then I would just play music for 5 more hours and barely ever record anything. This point was a boundary of mine, one of my main hows. I won't work with somebody who does not value my time. And I told the studio house owner, who I thought was my friend, that I didn't want to take these sessions anymore, and it felt disrespectful to me. At first, he acted cool, and then he went behind my back and talked to my mentor, Jay, and had her call me and tell me how upset he was, and they both went in on me about how I needed to keep doing this because it was a bad look for the studio, because the client liked me. Their actual motives were that they wanted to get to the client's dad, and I was the best option. And I never heard anyone talk good about the client's dad. So I didn't want to do that anyway. Another one of my hows. I never took another session, and my relationship with that house ended after that. Things like this are common. When you don't act the way that people want you to, they're going to go and find people who will do as they say. Let them. Besides the fact that I didn't want to do any of those sessions, the client deserved somebody who wanted to be there. And I know so many engineers who would be like, hell yeah, I'd love to sit around and not do anything for 4 hours. But that's not for me. And you could argue that going to work with the dad might get me to some of my whys faster, but if my hows aren't in alignment, then I'm moving towards my ego whys and not my purpose. And I always do my best to move in my purpose. One of the biggest decisions that I ever made was walking away from a major label engineer gig. This was my dream job. I had worked so hard to get into a major label. I could see all the future plaques hanging on my wall. I worked there for 6 weeks before I was fired or I quit. It kind of depends on who you talk to about the story, because I was wearing basketball shorts. I wear basketball shorts most of the time. I'm wearing them here today. Thank you. Anyone who knows me knows that it's my brand, and also as a woman in music, it's been my armor. One day after 6 weeks, the head engineer took me outside and says if I want to continue to work there, I can no longer wear the shorts. Now, I know you might be thinking, just wear jeans, dude. Do not lose your dream job over clothes. But the fact was that everybody there was wearing whatever they wanted. And when I went back inside that day, a male engineer was sitting in there wearing none other than basketball shorts, but nobody took him outside that day. They even told me I could wear cargo shorts, and still to this day, I don't know the difference except that cargo shorts are ugly. Right? We are in sessions for sometimes 12 hours or more with people who are doing drugs. I didn't understand how basketball shorts made me any less good at my job. And now look, I'm not telling you this to get you on my side. The point is that after I weighed all of my options, how they treated me, how much I got paid, and everything else I dealt with working there, I decided to stand up for myself. I wrote an email on why I thought the decision was wrong. They brought me in for a meeting and told me they couldn't allow me to work there if I continued to wear basketball shorts. I stood up, I said, "Thank you for your time," and I walked out. That was one of the hardest decisions of my life, but I knew that it wasn't going to stop me from what was for me. I always choose myself, my hows, and being authentic. And it wasn't my only shot. I went on to work with all the major record labels anyway. Come on. It gets better. And then 4 years later, I got rehired at that same label in the same seat that I got fired in, simply because I was Allie AMAC McGuire. Life is a bigger picture. It is not a little detail. Zoom out. And now look, safety has got to be a number one concern for you. Danger is an absolute thing to consider getting into this career. The music business is the wild, wild west. People have guns, people are on drugs, and people have tempers. Especially as a woman, I have had to be very aware of what's going on around me, and how much I can actually even stick up for myself. Getting out safely is top priority. If something feels unsafe, you get out as quickly as you can and you never go back. Be careful when going to artists' home studios. Even though I've been in professional studios late at night where there was no one else around, you're safer in a commercial studio. When you go to somebody's house, you're on their turf. Let people know where you're going. If you're a woman, bring somebody with you. I've turned down sessions to go work with some huge artists who were calling me to go to their house at 2 a.m. No song is worth putting yourself in danger. And now not only are you going to be running around making music, dealing with artists, you're also going to kind of have to run your own business. Most of your gigs aren't going to be taking taxes out for you. You're going to have to track your earnings and your expenses. You're going to have to make invoices, follow up with studios, and get deposits for your time when you're working independently. You have to understand copyrights, the difference between the song and the master recording, and how you get paid for that. Get a lawyer before you sign any contracts. Getting an LLC is highly recommended. Get your PRO for publishing. You are an entity. You are a business. Start treating yourself that way when you leave this room today. And look, even when you treat yourself as a business, there are inevitably going to be times when you have trouble getting paid the money that was agreed to you. Labels will put you on a net 90 and they still won't push the invoice through 90 days later. When you work at a studio like Melrose, JP handles tracking down the money for you. But when you're out on your own, it's up to you. We often let money slide for our ambitions and the music. But I've been owed $8,000. I've been owed $15,000, far past when the work was done. One time working with a major label, my mastering engineer didn't get paid $2,000 for a year and a half. This is a huge reality of the business. Don't ever mess around with getting paid. Be as vigilant as you can be about it, and don't ever give up. I have only ever not been paid by one person over the years, though many have tried to tire me out. And you're gonna have to spend money to make money. Something I didn't mention in the beginning is that I always had a studio and a portable rig to go wherever I needed to go. It was the first thing I bought. I always wanted to have my own space to work so I didn't have to rely on others for a place to make or mix music. And start with the consumer grade stuff because, of course, starting is the most important thing. And even if I don't really want to admit it, I'm sure hit records have been made on a entry-level Scarlett. Regardless, most pieces of gear are expensive. You've got to remember that you are a business and a business has to upgrade to scale up. Every time you invest in yourself, you are spending money that will help you make more money in the future. I could still be using my Mackie monitors, but my focals absolutely helped me grow as a mixing engineer and make more money. Not only because they sound way better, because they look super cool. Except that you're probably going to do some work for free. Working for free is the same as investing in yourself. In the beginning, you work for free because you need to get around people in the business and learn. Later, you do work for free for the connections it brings you. One of the best pieces of advice that JP ever gave me was never do it for less than you can stomach. And sometimes you can stomach free. When you're doing free work, always check in with your compass and your stomach to know if it's right for you. And word of mouth is great, but as in any business, branding and marketing are important. Social media is a powerful tool that we all love to hate and hate to love. Using social media and making tutorials helped me build trust with my clients because they could see that I knew what I was doing. Take advantage of this, but be authentic to yourself. Show who you are. This is going to help the right people find you. If you're just posting to look cool and get likes, eventually that's going to wear on you. This is a good place to check in with your compass. The internet can get you confused with your purpose-wise and your ego-wise real easy. I know that it did for me. You can get a lot of validation from the internet when you do something that looks cool. So are you doing it to look cool or are you doing it to make an impact? For me, it was both, an ego and a purpose why. I wanted to show people how successful I was, and I also wanted a bigger reach to make a bigger impact. Now, when you brand yourself and do content right, you don't only build trust with your clients, but with brands, and you attract them to work with you. The fact is that people like to see you do cool things. People love to hear you name drop. Even if that's not your thing, showcasing your work is going to help keeping you moving. What is in motion stays in motion. There is so much good and bad that comes with a career in the industry. Regardless of how in tune you stay with your compass, there are always going to be tough things to deal with. There will almost always be parts of this life that you do not like, that you do not want to do, or that you will hire someone else to do and they just will not do them right. You're going to lose gigs. You're going to lose sleep. Someone won't pay you for a year. You'll get replaced. Your credit list won't be cool enough, or they won't credit you at all. You might get the easiest, most stable gig on the planet. You might be juggling 10 gigs in a week. This is why it's so important to check in with your guides. These things help us create boundaries for ourselves as we navigate the industry to make it more sustainable for ourselves. There might only be a certain amount of time you're willing to live this lifestyle. You might be able to do it forever. You might not. Some people make #1 records for 20 years. Some people only get one. Some people never get any. Some people do this at a high level for 6 years and then they have to leave because they let their mental and physical health suffer so badly, only to come back 8 years later and continue to have a legendary career. And that's a true story. We're only humans here experiencing life. At the end of the day, are you enjoying it? If you're not, it's time to check in with your compass and see what might be going on. Sometimes you are comparing yourself to successful people who hate their life. Look inside yourself for validation and don't let your ego wise run the show. Take it slow and enjoy the ride. I burned out because I let my ego wise take the forefront for too long. I was never successful enough for myself. I never took days off to live my life. One day I was 19 and the next day I was 35. Life is ever changing and we have to change with it. Our wants and our needs change over time. Our compass changes over time. You might even change your what. Don't be afraid to make a change. I never thought my path would lead me here to talking to you today, but my purpose wise of impact and joy are overflowing giving this talk to you. Follow your compass. Don't be afraid to say no. You've got all the shots that you want to take. Find what moves and flow. Be aware of your whys so you know why you're making a decision. Take care of yourself. Remember that you can always just make music simply for the fact that it brings you joy. These are the realities of the music business. I wish someone had asked me my values and my whys, how I wanted to live, or told me any of these things when I first started. I hope you build your compass, you take it with you, you keep checking in. My hope is if more people are aware of themselves and their compass, we can change many of these toxic behaviors one small impact at a time. I hope this has helped you understand yourself and what you are getting into. It is a cool, crazy, beautiful life. Remember to enjoy it. Thank you guys so much.